I'm 77 years old now, and the most dangerous thing I've learned wasn't the loud mistakes. It was the silent ones. No scandals, no dramatic disasters, just quiet choices repeated over more than 40 years. Every time I chose not to speak up, not to push back, not to change, I told myself I was keeping the peace. But that silence didn't protect my life. It slowly shaped it.
The truth is, I made the silent choice every single day without even realizing it. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. I chose safety when what I really needed was courage. I nodded along to avoid trouble, to keep from disappointing anyone. Over time, I became exactly who society wanted me to be. Agreeable, stable, never rocking the boat. But somewhere along the way, I set my real self aside, telling myself I'd come back to it later. From the outside, my life looked fine. I had a house, a pension, respect. But when the door closed at night, I lived with someone who felt like a stranger. Myself. The house was so quiet I could hear my own thoughts. And that silence wasn't created by anyone else. It was the result of years of choosing silence, choosing safety, choosing not to live honestly. If you've ever looked fine on the outside, but felt empty on the inside, leave a 6 in the comments. I made that decision very early on. When I got married and started my career, I told myself I needed to be easy to live with. Don't rock the boat. Don't push back. Don't make things uncomfortable for anyone. I called it responsibility. But what I didn't realize was this. Every time I chose to be easy, I ignored a small part of my own voice. That silence followed me into my work, too. When the job drained me, I didn't push back. I worked weekends, swallowed my frustration, and called it maturity. I told myself endurance was something to be proud of. But the quieter I became, the further I drifted from myself. I traded away my spirit and my joy just to maintain the image of being stable. That silence came home with me, too. When I disagreed with my wife, I didn't say it out loud. I believed keeping the peace was what a good husband did. But over the years, I learned something painful. Peace bought with silence isn't real peace. It's a quiet illness, slowly eating away at closeness and trust. By always staying silent, I taught people that my needs and boundaries didn't exist. I built a comfortable life for everyone else, always accommodating, always available. But inside, I was slowly suffocating. No one erased me. I did it to myself. I once had a place where I could breathe, and that place was music. The piano was one of the few moments when I felt truly alive. No roles to play, no expectations to meet. Sitting at the keys, I didn't need to prove anything. But then came the moment of choice. I closed the piano lid and chose a safer path. Insurance, steady income, a clear pension, solid benefits. No one forced me. It was my own silent decision. I told myself passion could wait. That music would still be there when I had more time, when life felt more secure. But years pass quickly, and I learned this. Some things, if you don't live with them every day, don't disappear loudly. They fade quietly, leaving behind a space you don't quite know how to name. That safe job slowly turned into a pair of golden handcuffs. It gave me steady money, a sense of security, and constant reassurance that I'd made the right choice. But in return,
It locked my heart into a schedule with no room to breathe. I got used to postponing what I loved, always telling myself I'd come back to it someday. At 74, I opened my old piano again. I wiped the thin layer of dust off the keys and placed my hands down. The sound was still there, but my fingers were no longer as agile as they once were. My body no longer obeyed my memories. Music had never left. Time had. And that was when I understood. Some things, if you trade them away for too long, can't be bought back, no matter how much safety you're holding in your hands.
I did my duty as a father the way I understood it back then. I provided. I made sure my children lacked nothing. I showed up for the important decisions. I believed being a father meant being strong, steady, never letting emotions get in the way. So I hid my exhaustion, my worries, even my moments of insecurity. I was present through responsibility, but absent in spirit. When my children were sad, I talked them to toughen up. When they were confused, I offered advice instead of listening. Years later, my children grew into capable, independent adults, polite, respectful when they speak to me. But there's a quiet distance between us. And I've come to realize this. I raised them to adulthood, but I wasn't truly with them during the moments when they needed a father the most. My family is still there, but in a very distant way. My children call every week. They check on my health, share a few necessary updates, then end the call politely. We know each other's schedules, where everyone lives, what everyone is doing. Yet we can't reach each other's inner worlds. I know my children are doing fine. They know I'm still okay. But we don't know what each of us is worried about, afraid of, or quietly hoping for at this stage of life. We share the same last name and memories of the same home, but when we sit across from one another, we behave like strangers who were simply taught good manners. And I've come to understand this. That distance didn't come from one big event. It was built slowly, over many years, each time I chose silence instead of real connection.
When I look back on my entire life, I realize my greatest regret isn't the wrong decisions I made. It's all the times I didn't dare to say no. My life was shaped by countless yeses, spoken to please others, to keep the peace, to avoid being seen as selfish or difficult. I told myself I was sacrificing for my family, for my work, for responsibility. But over time, I understood the truth. I was using sacrifice to hide my fear of rejection. Along the way, I slowly abandoned the child inside me, the child who once knew what he loved, what he wanted, and believed his feelings mattered. And when that finally became clear, I understood this. Betraying yourself is the quietest loss of all, but also the longest lasting one. When I look back on my entire life, I realize my greatest regret isn't the wrong decisions I made. It's all the times I didn't dare to say no. My life was shaped by countless yeses, spoken to please others, to keep the peace, to avoid being seen as selfish or difficult. I told myself I was sacrificing for my family, for my work, for responsibility. But over time, I understood the truth. I was using sacrifice to hide my fear of rejection. Along the way, I slowly abandoned the child inside me, the child who once knew what he loved, what he wanted, and believed his feelings mattered. And when that finally became clear, I understood this. Betraying yourself is the quietest loss of all, but also the longest-lasting one. There's one word I used my entire life. Fine. It hid loneliness, boredom, longing. I lived fine year after year until one day I realized time had run out. Fine isn't peace. It's just prolonged silence. I can't go back, but you still can. You can speak the truth. You can walk away from a job that's killing your spirit. You can live honestly with your emotions. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose a loud choice instead of continuing to stay silent. If this story touched you, leave a comment sharing one truth you've been hiding. And if you want stories like this to keep being told, please subscribe and hit like so this message can reach someone who needs it.